A sabbatical isn't just time away from work, it's a chance to breathe, to reset, and to remember what matters. Mine was built around three ideas: rest, learning, and reflection. On paper, they were separate, but in practice, they overlapped because life and learning never unfold in neat segments. The first few days were spent close to home. I slowed down, packed the truck, and made time with my wife and daughter. I wanted to be fully present before heading out. During that time, I also said goodbye to a close friend, a reminder of how fragile our time really is. That moment shaped the tone of the journey that followed. With the truck packed and the camera ready, I set out on September 28th, 3,000 miles ahead, from the mountains of New Hampshire to the Copper Hills of Georgia and the bourbon country of Kentucky. What I found wasn't just landscapes or lessons, it was a renewed sense of craft, history, and belonging. Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Walking those fields, I thought about the generations before me, builders, fighters, and teachers. Standing among the monuments, I realized the stories we inherit shape the ones we pass on. That night, I slept in a Walmart parking lot in Front Royal, Virginia, grateful for simplicity and solitude. The next morning, I drove Skyline Drive through rolling fog and endless overlooks. With my camera in hand, I began relearning how to see, how to slow down and pay attention. It felt symbolic, reawakening both my creative eye and my attention to detail. From there, I drove south to North Carolina, visited old friends, and watched their son's final middle school soccer game. Mentorship, whether on the field or in the shop, is its own form of craftsmanship. Driving through the Great Smoky Mountains, fog and rain filled the valleys. I stopped at overlooks, watched weather roll across the ridgelines, and even encountered a herd of elk. One bull came a little too close, a reminder that beauty often walks hand in hand with risk. That night I stayed in Maryville, Tennessee, grateful for warmth and the rhythm of the road. October 1st. Heading toward Dahlonega, Georgia, I passed through the Nantahala and Chattahoochee forests, names that roll off the tongue like music. I drove the tail of the dragon, 318 curves in 11 miles. It felt like a metaphor for the journey itself, challenging, exhilarating, demanding focus. By the time I reached Adam Burgess's shop in Clarksville, Tennessee, I was ready to shift from traveler to learner. Adam, a skilled metalsmith, welcomed me with patience and enthusiasm. We started simple, laying out parts and cutting copper sheets. Every line mattered. Every curve had a purpose. Each day began early and ended with tired hands and a full heart. The rhythm of the work was meditative, the shop filled with the smell of flux and the ring of hammer on metal. I learned not just technique, but humility, the kind that comes from realizing how much mastery hides behind simplicity. By midweek, Adam taught me to braze copper to stainless steel, a balance of heat, patience, and intuition. He and his wife, Carrie, invited me to dinner, and their warmth reminded me that craftsmanship is as much about community as it is about skill. On my last day in the shop, I helped Adam build inventory and crafted a copper cup of my own, a small but meaningful artifact of a week's worth of learning, sweat, and gratitude. Leaving Tennessee, I began the long journey home, weaving reflection into motion. My route carried me through Kentucky's Bourbon Trail, where I visited Heaven Hill, Willet, and Jim Beam. Each distillery offered its own lesson in tradition, scale, and craft. The highlight was Kentucky Cooperage, the largest barrel producer in the world. Watching raw oak become fire-charred barrels was mesmerizing. Steam, flame, pressure, and timing, an act of controlled transformation. It felt familiar. The same balance of heat and discipline that defines good woodworking and metalwork. The experience carried deep personal meaning. Much of my free time is spent in Danbury, New Hampshire, on land my family has held for centuries. In 1720, King George I granted that land to my ancestor for service during the French and Indian Wars. His grandson built the water-powered mill that still stands today. They never made whiskey barrels, but they did make wooden nail kegs, circular containers not unlike the cooperage I had just toured. Standing among those stacks of new American oak, I felt a full circle connection, generations of craftsmanship, from my ancestors' mill to my classroom at UTech. Over the following days, I continued to Stitzel Weller, Peerless, Michter's, Old Forester, Buffalo Trace, Castle and Key, and Woodford Reserve. Each visit reinforced how history, tradition, and innovation can coexist. These distilleries, many over a century old, continue to evolve, just as we, as educators and makers, must. As funds and time began to dwindle, I turned toward home. My final two stops were deeply personal. In Staruka, Pennsylvania, I visited the Staruka Viaduct, a breathtaking stone bridge where my ancestors served as head mason. Completed in 1848, it stretches 1,040 feet in length, rising nearly 100 feet above the valley and composed of 17 arches, all built in just over a year by 800 laborers. Standing there, I marveled at what human hands can achieve when guided by patience and purpose. My last stop was Frost Valley YMCA in the Catskills, a place I lived and worked nearly 2 decades ago. It hadn't changed much, and neither had its quiet power to remind me why I teach, build, and mentor. This sabbatical was never meant to be a vacation. It was a journey through craft, heritage, and reflection, a pilgrimage that reconnected me to the deeper why behind my work. From the mountains of Virginia, to Adam Burgess's copper shop in Tennessee, to the cooperatives of Kentucky, I was reminded that craftsmanship is a universal language, patient, demanding, profoundly human. It bridges centuries and connects people through curiosity and care. In woodworking, in metalwork, and in teaching, the principles are the same. Respect the process, pay attention to detail, and be willing to fail, learn, and try again. I returned home with new skills, yes, but more importantly, with new perspective. Reflection doesn't wait for the end of a trip. It happens mile by mile, in the silence between destinations. To be forged by fire is to face challenge and transformation. To be softened by rain is to allow humility, empathy, and patience to temper that strength. That balance between grit and grace defines not only good craftsmanship, but a good life.